Hi guys, Every Knife Guy here, and I don't really know how this review is going to go. There's a lot of stuff to cover, and I never write any notes for these things, but we'll do our best to get through everything. The tiny knife occupying the very center of your screen is a Spyderco Techno, which you know, and you clicked on the title of this video. And I've had this knife for a few weeks now, and only now getting around to doing a review on it. And this will be probably more of a ramble than a review. There's a lot to say about this knife. I don't have much negative to say about it. It's pretty incredible, and it's probably become my favorite knife very quickly in my collection, just in the couple of weeks I've had it. There's a bit of an aberration, or this particular Techno is a bit of a freak, if you will. I will not mention that straight off the bat. I'll leave it to you guys to try and figure it out as we go through the review. I think we'll start off and we'll just do a little bit of kind of background on what the Techno is, and then we'll come to that a bit of a difference from the other Technos you've probably seen in reviews. So we'll do that. And actually, I was so excited about getting this knife. The build up was so strong on this particular one. You know how it is when you're clicking that buy now button and you're getting a knife that's been on your list for a long time, or on your want list or your to-do list for a long time. You get quite excited, and I was so excited to buy this particular knife. I actually ordered on eBay some matching anodized blue hardware, or well, not matching, but complementing blue hardware, if it'll focus. And I've had this for a few days now and haven't installed it because I was waiting until I did this review. I wanted to do that halfway through this. So during the course of this review, we're going to install that and see how that looks. But as it is, this is the way it comes from the factory, the way it looks. You can see it's a couple of weeks old because this has titanium scales, as you probably know. If you're watching this review, chances are you know a little bit about production knives and slightly higher value, higher quality Spydercos, and to have an interest in this knife in particular, because it's a weird knife. It's very small. We'll do some size comparisons shortly. It's very small, but it has a strange kind of unfathomable allure, I think, to people who collect or enjoy production knives. You watch so many reviews on YouTube, or I've watched a lot of reviews anyway, where people are, they say it doesn't make sense on paper. This is a tiny knife. Obviously you don't know the size of my hands, but I'm going to show you some other knives in a second. It's a very, very small blade. It's very, very thick, 4.5mm thick blade stock, on something with a, I know I'm switching in metric imperial here, but a 2.55 inch blade, and 4.5mm thick, whatever that is, point whatever. So it's very stubby and it's very thick. You can tell there just by looking at it. I mean, look, it's an absolute wedge of a blade. Full flat ground. But the reality is, its performance is actually excellent. It works very much in the same principle as a splitting maul, I think, for wood. It's driving a wedge through whatever it is you're cutting in your EDC, and the fact that this is a very sharp edge in the factory, if you can keep this sharp, and I think edge retention is very good on this knife and this steel. There's a clue for you there, guys. I think as long as you keep it sharp, the wedge works really, really well. But overall, I mean, very small knife. You can see there pretty much, 3-finger grip, 4 fingers if you're lucky. I don't have particularly massive hands, medium gents hands, I would say. Let's go ahead and do a couple of size comparisons just so we can get that out of the way. Before I purchased this, one of the comparisons I was really looking for online, I searched on YouTube and Google and didn't really find anything very good, was with the Domino. Previously probably my smallest Spyderco, and I was very keen to see, I was concerned by the size of this. I didn't know if it was going to be too small for me to do a practical knife. I really wanted a size comparison with the Domino, and if I'd seen this picture here, I know this is far away from the camera, guys, but I'm going to lay them down on the desk so you can see. If I'd seen this picture here, I would have had some serious concerns about buying this knife, because this to me previously was quite a small Spyderco. It fit nicely in my hand, but it was quite small, and I didn't really know if I wanted to go smaller. The dice, of course, is a smaller version of the Domino. I had never really considered buying the dice because I knew it was smaller than Domino, paramilitary. Actually, paramilitary is not that much bigger than Domino. It just feels, it has that feel to it that it is bigger. If I'd known this was this much smaller than the Domino, I would have definitely had some concerns. In fact, if we pick up here, I'm going to close this up for a second. This is a Victorinox Cadet, and if you own a Cadet, you'll know that's a pretty small knife, pretty small pocket knife, pretty much exactly the same length. Thickness, quite a bit of difference, but it's almost exactly the same length. So really quite small. Open this up again and bring in one more comparison here just so you get the idea. There's a mini Griptilian, smaller than a mini Griptilian, both in edge and in handle. So if you've ever held one of these, you'll notice it's a fairly small knife. You can see my hand is kind of hunched up there to operate the axis lock, but this quite a bit smaller. But this is where the chunkiness of this knife kind of comes in. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here because we haven't really talked about where this design came from or anything like that, but just to touch on you know, kind of the aesthetics of this knife, the chunkiness of this knife is really its appeal. It's a very solid object in the hand, full titanium construction, titanium frame lock, Chris Reeve integral lock of course, and it just feels very, very nice in the hand because it has that thickness. If it was that length and thin, and that's one of the reasons that I prefer using a Pioneer as an EDC Victorinox over a Cadet. I mean, this is just quite thin and quite slender to really get a hold of and use in cutting tasks. But this, I mean, it feels like you're holding onto a much larger knife. You have that little wedge of a blade, which I said is really came very, very sharp, and you know, you can really, you know, do some work with that. So it really works, and I think that's something that came across to me in the other reviews that I watched. People couldn't really explain the attraction of this knife. It has a certain sort of quality to it, and the action of it is just kind of, everything feels right about it. It feels like it was well put together, everything was machined perfectly. It just feels very high quality, and it should. I mean, at the moment you're looking at paying between kind of 180 to 200 US for this on, well, Blade HQ I think at the moment 180, Amazon.com around about 190, Knife Center about 178, something like that. So you're looking at high kind of 170 to $200. So you should expect quality. You don't always get it, but this knife just feels exceptional. Unlike pretty much all the other knives I own, some of which are more expensive than this. This just has a really high quality feel to it. So that's the main takeaway the first time you use it. The first thing I thought when I took it out of the box was, wow, that's small, way smaller than I even expected. And of course I looked at the dimensions. I knew it was a 2.5 inch blade, so I did expect that, but there's something about actually seeing it physically in front of you and operating it, opening it for the first time. It just felt absolutely tiny, but now having used it quite a bit, and you can see how smooth it is. Having used it quite a bit, it just feels completely natural, completely comfortable. I can operate it with flicking it open there because you have this big hefty frame to hold in the back of your hand. There's no feeling that's going to slip out or that you don't have enough purchase or anything like that. It just feels completely comfortable in your hand. So love it, absolutely love it. If you couldn't tell by now, I'm in love with this knife. So let's rewind a little bit. This is designed by Polish knife maker Marcin Slish, and I probably completely butchered the guy's name. I do apologize, but it's one of the harder ones to say, I think, and you can see his logo on there, the very cool little Wolverine style logo. Also the designer of another Spyderco collaboration, the Bowie, or Bowie, depending on your pronunciation of that. This is produced in Taiwan, the Taichung Spyderco factory, which of course is renowned for producing probably their highest quality, tightest tolerance knives of all, even more so than their Golden, Colorado facility. And yeah, so it was Marcin's custom knife, the Mouse, that this is based off of, and a few subtle differences with that. There's not really much point in going into that because this is a whole different animal. This is a $200 production knife. I don't know what you pay for a Mouse, but I think it's considerably more than that, fair to say. So full titanium frame lock, as we mentioned. We have I think G10, I guess it's G10. G10 spacer in the back here, that nice accent blue color, which is kind of classic, really nice kind of bright royal blue, I would call it. You can see there's some quite chunky jimping on there. chunky jimping on the back of the blade, and quite rounded, but it gives a nice feel to it. It's not sore on your thumb. You just know where your thumb is. It's a locator rather than anything else. Some really nice detailing as well. You can see there, if I can get this to focus for you. I really love the details of this knife and how it's all so well thought out. You can see the top of the scales come along. They drop down perfectly in line with that first dip into that first hollow of the jimping. You can see it dipping down in there, exactly in line with that. So these two first lumps of the jimping here stand up proud to the titanium scale, is what I'm trying to say. So it just kind of all flows together, and it's a really nice little fine detail that a lot of other designs would kind of butcher, but that's really, really nice. And also on the back here you can see the steps of this jimping on the back are just proud to the scales, so you do feel that just in the kind of the palm of your hand. Lanyard hole back here, just the one screw through there to hold the front part of the spacer, and the pocket clip screws actually hold the back of the spacer, which you can see wraps down the back here. Again, no ridges here, everything machined very, very nicely, fits together perfectly. You can see there, no gaps, no issues. Beautiful pocket clip on this, so simple. This is the wire clip, of course, loved by so many people. It does have its issues. It is a little flexible. You can see a very gentle squeeze there causes it to flex. It's very, very easy when you're holding the knife to deploy it to bend it like so, and you will start to see the consequent snail trail on titanium underneath, where it rubs at the kind of the bottom of this divot here. But I think one of the beauties of titanium, not only it has that indescribable feel in the hand, that kind of tactile feel, it's smooth and yet you can really tell what type of metal you're holding. And if you have owned a titanium frame lock or titanium knife, such as Domino here, you'll know that feel, and it's something, there's something kind of I don't know, very pleasant about holding a titanium knife. And another very pleasant thing about it is the way that it does wear. I think knives like this look so much better with wear, whereas knives such as, you know, a standard G10 knife such as this, wear on the blade I think looks good because knives are meant to be used, but wear on the G10 it just kind of looks tatty. It's not, some people might be into that, not for me. I like to keep the handles and stuff looking good because I think that's part of the look of the knife. Titanium frame lock knives I think just look better and better as they age, so it's not a big deal for me that the pocket clip moves around and is going to make a mark there. There's going to be plenty of other marks. You can see already just from pocket carry there's quite a lot of marks on here. So that's a clip which is tip up only. It is reversible left or right, which is nice. Very simple pivot screw, Torx head there. Same on the other side. Detailing on the Chris Reeve integral frame lock. There is no over travel stop here, so I'm just going to demonstrate. You can flex that bar too far, but the tension is really quite high. Not uncomfortably high, but it is quite high, so you would be struggling to do that. It's not really too much of an issue. Lovely detailing on the lock here. You can see the relief here, just to get the right tension on the lock bar. A little hole cut out there. On the inside of the lock bar you have this chamfering, which means that when you put your thumb through there to disengage the lock, you're not hitting against the hard, harsh edge of the titanium. You're actually pressing directly onto that little beveled area, which means you have a very nice purchase, but at the same time it's not painful. You could sit and play with this knife all day, and it's really not going to cause your thumb any concern. You can see there, if I can focus it, deploy, hit that bevel, deploy, hit that bevel, all day, really not an issue. Lockup is what, 30 to 40%, pretty much perfect, what you want. Obviously it's going to wear in over time. There is no stainless steel interface here, so this is titanium on steel, which means that it will wear in a little bit over time. It's not really a big deal. Starting nice and early, so you do have plenty of life in this knife, even if you do sit and play with it all day, every day. Blade centering. and a very thick blade, not a huge amount of space either side. Blade centering, I would say perfect, or pretty near perfect. Deployment on phosphor bronze washers, no bearings here. You might be able to see just in there a little glint of the washers. Was not gritty by any means when I got it, but it was a little slow, as you would expect. Half an hour later, buttery smooth, and it just gets better and better and better. The more I play with this knife, the nicer it gets. You can see you can just shake it closed. You can do that nice smooth deployment with the thumb, or you can flick it open. If you're a fan of finger flicking at the back, so just demonstrating the paramilitary, if you're a fan of doing that, you're not really in luck here, because the design of this knife is you have this lovely semicircular cutout on the front scale here, if you're right-handed of course, and again that's beveled, really nice detail, beveled all the way around the scales actually, as you can see. So you have that lovely cutout there, which makes very nice straight down access to the thumb hole. But on the back, not so much. The lock bar obscures the top kind of 45% of that opening hole, which makes a very difficult deployment. You can, if I can get it, you can catch it, depending on your fingers. I can't get it right now. You can catch it from time to time and manage to deploy it with your middle finger at the back, so you can do it two-handed. There we go. You can just about do that, but it's very, very difficult. It would have been quite nice even to get a slight bevel or cutout there. Obviously this is for strength, keeping the lock bar all in one piece. A slight cutout or bevel would have been nice just to allow that option. And similarly, I would have said, although I love the chamfering here and the whole look of the perfectly round hole with this cutout in the scale, it would have been nice if this front corner had been shaved off a little bit, maybe so this was more half a teardrop shape, because then you'd be able to go more with a forward motion with your thumb to deploy, whereas you have to very much do that sweep round, which isn't a big deal. And certainly on such a small, kind of perfectly formed knife where everything is super smooth, it is a joy to sit and, you know, make that motion with it, if playing with knives is your thing. But it would have been nice to have a, you know, been able to do a faster deployment straightforward, I think, rather than having to do that sweep. But anyway, can't really fault the action on it. It is super, super smooth, super nice, and D10 is excellent. Heavy, heavy blade, but even with, it takes a wreal whack to get it to break that detent and fly out. So I think, fair to say, a lot less to do paramilitary. Let's try the domino. Excellent detent and domino as well, but this is pretty comparable. And I have a bit of a thing about that. If you've watched many of my videos, you'll know that I'm not a fan of a weak detent, so very, very pleased with this one. And just feels right when you're breaking it free to deploy. So pretty much perfect. You can see the flat ground blade is stonewashed. Not my favourite finish, but it suits the knife. It's a very understated knife, apart from that pop of blue on the back. I don't know why I'm trying to clean a knife with a very dirty cloth. That doesn't seem to make much sense, does it? Let's turn this outside in. Yeah, it suits the knife. It's a very muted kind of look to it, but I think it just all kind of works together. You have that kind of greyed out pocket clip, little pop of blue in the back, and I'm curious to see when we add the blue hardware. We have 7 pieces, so we have the pivot screws each side, the 2 locator screws for the spacer, pocket clip screws, and also the stop pin, which you can see there, all anodized blue. So I'm curious to see how that's going to look, whether I like it or not, but it will add another little pop of colour to this knife. And now I think it's time to touch on what I mentioned at the beginning, which is this is a bit of an unusual Techno, and you'll be able to see there, this is in CPM S30V. Now, if you know anything about Techno, you'll know that it is pretty famously in CTS XHP, to the point that, if we can bring in the packaging here, which is the usual Spyderco box, C158 TIP Techno Plain Edge. Anything else on that end? And of course, Spyderco always give you a lovely little bit of information about the knife you just purchased, which I love. I know I say that every time. I will hold this up so you can pause it and read if you wish. Plenty of information on this knife online. I think it was about 2012 it came out, and as I say, it's been receiving pretty much unanimously great reviews ever since. So there's a lot of material online. If you do want to read more about this knife and find out more about it and hear other people's opinions, I think you'll find they're mostly positive. Now, the blade, this is what I'm saying about the blade steel. The blade is ground from Carpenter CTS XHP stainless steel, an advanced alloy that offers an outstanding combination of strength, edge tension, and corrosion resistance. Made in America by Carpenter, CTX XHP combines extreme toughness and edge retention of D2 tool steel with corrosion resistant qualities equal to that of 440C. So, there you have it. Spyderco literature in the box is incorrect. Why is that? Well, I did a little bit of digging online. To be quite honest with you, I don't really have enough time to research it fully, but from what I could see on the forums and so on, this is not the first time Spyderco have done this. I forget the other knife that they did it with, but they very subtly, as in they didn't really tell anyone, changed blade steels a couple of years into producing a knife. And they've done it before, and they have changed this into CPM S30V. There's a couple of thoughts on this. Some are that the Taichung plant couldn't get CTS XHP for a while, or it was too high a price to be justifiable, and they decided to just change over. Maybe with or without Spyderco's US knowledge, we don't know. They maybe just, I don't know. Somewhere along the line, someone decided they were going to change to CPM S30V, and for some reason the packaging hasn't caught up. I think there was only a certain amount of these produced, because if you look at Blade HQ right now, they're still advertising and picturing CTS XHP model. Same with Amazon, same with Knife Center. So people are selling it still as CTS XHP. When I ordered this on Amazon here in Canada, it's in the title of the listing it said CTS XHP, but in the text, in the description text, one bullet point said S30V, one bullet point said CTS XHP. I went ahead and bought it because I really didn't care which it was. I was actually quite intrigued to see if I would get one of the kind of more unique ones. And I have knives in both steels. I have several in S30V, and if I can get it to focus, you will be able to see, come on, where are you? CTS XHP on the Domino, and CPM S30V on the paramilitary, and several others that I said. And I don't really have an issue with either steel. I love both, and from reading online, a lot of people think they're fairly comparable anyway, so it's not a big deal to me. And yeah, maybe one of only a limited number of these. I don't know how many were produced in S30V. I imagine quite a lot, but certainly not the traditional steel for this knife, which is kind of a neat quirk, I think. And yeah, it just makes it a little bit different. So what I think we'll do is I will go ahead and stop this video, start a new section, putting in the hardware, and we'll speed that up because you guys don't want to watch me go through every single screw and stuff here. We'll speed it up and get a look at it after. So let's take a look, one more look at it before we start putting in new hardware, see how things look afterwards. And yeah, we'll go ahead and do that now. Okay guys, so that was a little bit more work than I was expecting. A couple of these screws were kind of stubborn, but they came out in the end. And I think the blue anodized hardware is really a nice touch. It really sets it off. Not quite so plain now, and I just think it complements it really well with that blue backspacer. It's a different blue, of course, but just adds a little bit of flair to it, and I think I'm pretty pleased with how that's looking. It'll take a little while to get used to it, but you can see there the results of that. A pretty simple change, not too expensive for new hardware. It's kind of hard to see in this light because it is quite harsh, I'm afraid, but you'll see on Instagram when I post this up. And yeah, so another kind of compliment to the quality of this knife. When I put the pivot screws back in, tighten them down as hard as I could, which usually I would do, and then I'll slacken or adjust them as I need to. This is them as tight as they'll go. The knife is just as smooth, if not smoother, than it was when I took it apart. So perfect, absolutely rock solid construction on this knife. Really can't say enough about how quality the feel is, the operation. You can see there the blade still absolutely central. If you can take a knife apart like that very, very quickly, and I was rushing it because even though I speeded up that video, I knew it was going to take a while. If you can take a knife apart as quickly as you can, all the screws, put everything back together, and don't even have to fiddle with it to fine tune it, to get things centered, to get things operating as they were before, I think that says an awful lot about how well it's built. In fact, I've come to like this knife so much, it means that Slish's other collaboration or main collaboration design with Spyderco, the Bowie knife, is probably up there now as one of my next purchases, hopefully. So that's kind of tells you how much I like this design, the details of it, and I think I would find a lot more of that on that other model. So yeah, what else to say? So why would you buy this knife? What is it useful for? Is it good for EDC? I think it is. It's smaller than I would choose normally. Let's just bring the comparisons back out again. It's smaller than I would choose normally, although saying that, this is an excellent EDC knife, which is only slightly larger. But it just works. Like, it's an awesome slicer, and you wouldn't expect it. I mean, let's just compare blade stock here for a second. You can see they're quite a bit thicker than the Paramilitary 2, and look at the tip. That's the big difference. Look at it in the top kind of quarter of that blade. This stays thick right down to the tip. Paramilitary 2, so quick look from this side. I mean, you can see there, this is an absolute wedge of a blade, but it is an excellent slicer. And I think it's just the way that flat grind profile just kind of acts as a wedge and really splits stuff apart, as well as you know, doing a clean slice. Let's have a look at the Griptilian. Even better comparison. This is a slightly larger knife, but look at the stock on it. Crazy. Over twice as thick easily at the tang here. But it just works. So I think it does work as an EDC. One thing you might be thinking, well, what about the length? Okay, it can slice, but what do you do in your EDC? Well, for me, the majority of my EDC, hands down, is food prep. So let's just look at, we have a pretty typical size apple here. Quite a large apple, I guess, but pretty typical. Paramilitary 2, let's just get an idea. So there, you're going to slice through, it's hard to tell on camera, maybe look at it this way. It's hard to tell on camera, but you're going to slice through at least, I would say, 90% of that with a proper slice of the Paramilitary 2. Let's get rid of the Griptilian for a second. The Techno, you're probably going to be, I don't know, 60%, 60 to 65%. So you're not going to be able to cut something like this in one go, unless obviously you turn it on this axis and go for it right through. But if you wanted to lay that flat on a board, as you probably would, and slice it straight down, you can do that no problem with Paramilitary. Hold it, slice it. This, maybe not so much. So it depends what kind of task you're doing, really. I mean, if you're cutting bigger stuff like this, then you probably don't want to carry that. But if you're cutting zip ties, rope, slicing up cardboard for recycling, doing simple food tasks, and not chopping up large onions, apples, whatever for cooking, then this is a perfectly capable blade, and it's very sturdy. I could use this to pry, I would say, and have absolutely no concerns about there being issues with that tip or whatever. I mean, it's a $200 knife, so whether you want to pry something or use it as a screwdriver is down to personal preference and how you treat your knives. But I certainly wouldn't be doing any of that with a Paramilitary. I mean, it's just too delicate. It's a delicate blade, and it's a different feel. This excels, that's what it is. We all know the Paramilitary 2 is a standout EDC knife, but I don't think you can knock this as an EDC either. It is classy, It is very refined. It's sheeple friendly as well. I mean, people look at this. This one maybe not so much. Okay, it's in a camel pattern, but if you look at an all black paramilitary, it is a mean looking knife. If you look at this, people would call this cute. It's dainty. Well, it's not dainty. It's dinky is the word I'm looking for. It's very small. That's the reason we carry, or sometimes we carry knives like this in places where if someone spotted you with a knife that looked like this, they might be a little concerned. But I mean, who's afraid of this? Absolutely no one. It's a nice little knife. So is this little knife. And okay, when it's open, it's a little weird looking. People may never have seen a knife that looks quite like that, unless you're into knives. But it's not particularly scary looking. It's not particularly pointy, although it does have a nice piercing point. And I think it just works in a lot of situations, and is a very good daily carry, not just a fun knife to play with and have in your collection. And yeah, I don't think you can really give it a higher endorsement than that. It just does everything really, really well. My only quirks were, I guess, the movement in the pocket clip, the slight harshness of these angles here. Other than that, it is a little hefty, about 3.5 ounces, but if you're looking at carrying this as an EDC blade, this is about 3.75, 3.8, something like that. So it's comparable weight. You just look at it and say, I'm getting much less knife for that weight. But if this suits your EDC needs, then what does it matter really? It's not really a big deal, is it? So the only other thing to compare it on is price really. I mean, it's a full titanium frame lock, so you do expect a bit of a higher price. Something like the paramilitary at the moment, I think on Amazon these are about 120 and this is 180, 90. So are you willing to pay that premium for this knife when you could say this has additional utility, bigger blade, compression lock? There's really nothing to say wrong about that knife, but this just has that certain hard to pinpoint quality to it, and I think that's what attracted me in the first place. As I mentioned earlier in this very long and rather rambling review, I'm sorry about that, but I just have a lot to say about this knife. It's one of those ones that really lives up to the hype, and I didn't even really understand why I was so excited to get it in the first place, because everything says no, it's too small, it's too fat, it's weird looking, it shouldn't be a fun knife, it shouldn't be a knife that you absolutely love to carry when you have other super functional blades sitting around that are also fun to play with. But it just has that something. It's got a certain draw to it that's pretty hard to explain. But I do recommend, if you have the opportunity to try one of these, do try it and give it a chance, because the first thing you'll probably think is, wow, that's small. But give it a chance, and I'm sure you'll come to love it. If you're into knives, you're into playing with knives and using knives in your daily life, you can do a lot worse than the Techno. So I think that about wraps it up, guys. There's probably loads of stuff I've forgotten to say, but you know, that's how it goes. Please leave your comments, and we can discuss it a little bit more if you like. If you have any questions or anything specific, let me know and I'll do my best to answer them. And I do appreciate you sticking around if you made it this far through the video. I will be back with more videos soon. Cheers.